So, we're going to talk a lot today about the emotional guidance system, because that is your key to getting to wherever you want to be. If you make a decision that wherever you are, it is your dominant intent to find a feeling that feels even a little bit better. Today, no matter where I'm going, no matter what I'm doing, no matter who I'm doing it with, it is my dominant intent to look for that which I'm wanting to see. If you make a decision that you want to find the best feeling thought that you have access to, now those are key words. Not the best feeling thought that has ever been thought by anybody. Not the best feeling thought that you have ever thought, but the best feeling thought that you have access to right now. So think about it. Let's say that something has happened. Maybe it's unusual, but it happened and you're aware of it and you are feeling this strong grief or despair. You're feeling this suffocating feeling. You almost can't catch your breath. It even makes you feel claustrophobic. And someone says, boy, you're really in a funk. You need to get over it. And you want to say, I would just rather kill you. Because just because they're in this bright, happy place does not mean that you can automatically jump there. Those kinds of quantum leaps from time to time happen if the desire is powerful enough, but we do not recommend them, because when you make that kind of a jump, it is upsetting to your experience and it usually is not long lasting. So what we are encouraging you to do instead is to reach for the best feeling thought that you have access to. So think about it. Now think about what that depression might feel like or has felt like. And then think about a thought. And by the way, these thoughts come to you as a sort of self-surviving mechanism. Sometimes your inner being even offers them to you. A thought of anger. So you go home and you say, Abraham is teaching us how to get mad. And we say, if you are in this place where you are feeling strong depression, we may very well encourage you to thoughts of anger, because you have access to thoughts of anger from your place of depression, while you do not necessarily, in fact, not usually, in fact, not often, in fact, hardly ever have access to thoughts of joy from your place of depression. You could change the subject and go there sometimes. But if there is something that's been happening in your experience that is very activated in your vibration, it is much easier for you to bridge your emotions and make your jumps gradually than it is to try to jump all at once. And so, if from your place of depression, you reach for the best thought that you can find, it might be a thought of anger. And as you beat the drum of that anger for a while, even though you're certainly not where you ultimately want to be, you do feel relief from the depression, and only you know that you are feeling it. Very often those around you are not all that happy that you've moved from depression to anger, because you were easier to deal with in depression. At least you stayed in your room and out of their way. And when you are angry, often you are right in their face, but they don't know. They don't know that it was a vibrational improvement for you. And the thing that we want you to hear is that it doesn't do you any good either unless you have done it deliberately. In other words, when you deliberately reach for the better feeling, life-giving thought of rage, which felt so much better to you than the thought of despair or depression, and you then manage to beat the drum of that a little bit, and most importantly, you stop and say, I have chosen this thought and it feels better, and no one else knows the improvement on my journey that I have made. Now you have regained some of your power, and that feeling of powerlessness begins to subside just a little bit. And as that feeling of powerlessness subsides just a little bit, now you're in a different vibrational place, and now you have access to better feeling thoughts that just a little bit ago you did not have access to. But then from anger, you can jump easily into frustration, and from frustration into overwhelmment, and from overwhelmment into pessimism, and from pessimism into maybe some hopelessness, or some pessimistic hopelessness anyway. And then you can move from some hopefulness into optimism, and then you can move into believing, into knowing, into that place where you really are. But it is a gradual process. And by gradual, we don't mean weeks or months or years or even days. We mean you just can't make the jump all at once. And sometimes what happens is, when you are in your place of despair or depression or anywhere along this vibrational meter, and one of your well-meaning Abraham friends who says, you know, you create your own reality, You say, yes, I've been scripting about your death all day here. That friend, no matter where they are, does not know what your vibrational content is. You are the only one that knows that you've made improvement. As Jerry and Esther go across the desert, quite often they go from Phoenix to San Diego, and about halfway between Phoenix and San Diego is Yuma, Arizona. And when Jerry and Esther would discover that they are in Yuma, they do not just pull off the side of the road and cry because they are not in San Diego. In other words, they understand. They don't get so upset that they're not where they want to be that they get disoriented and just turn around and go back to Phoenix. Because that journey is quantifiable. In other words, it's easy to understand the distance between Phoenix and San Diego. And so it's easy to understand. Let's see. If my destination is San Diego and I'm facing in the direction of San Diego and I keep going, it is reasonable to expect that I would get there. And the same thing is true of everything that you want, no matter what it is, whether it is a lover, whether it's an improved relationship, whether it is more money, whether it is a different body condition. It does not matter where you are. The distance from where you are to where you want to be is quantifiable once you understand when you're facing the right direction. When you understand that this thought does feel better than whatever thought and feeling that you had before, now you have gained control, and now you can tell which direction you're going. Depending on different subjects, you might have different emotional set points. Relative to finances, you might feel very comfortable. Relative to your body, you might be in despair. Relative to your relationship, you might be feeling better. In other words, different subjects activate within you different vibrational ranges. But the whole, the sort of sum total, the sort of averaging out of what your vibration is, which is really the sum total, the averaging out of the thoughts that you're thinking during a day, let's say, that equals your point of attraction. And your point of attraction is what is manifesting in your experience. And so we want you to become very aware of the way you feel, but we don't want the way you feel to frighten you, because we want you to understand that just like going from Phoenix to San Diego, that once you are aware of what an improved feeling feels like, and once you are factoring out what everybody else thinks about it, then your guidance system will work for you. Sometimes we see you in depression, and that self-survival instinct of anger will come over you, and you will feel so much better, and then you'll meet a friend or a therapist or a counselor or a mate or some well-meaning person who says, you know, that anger is not good for you. You should do something about that anger. And then you just end up right back in despair. So you go from depression or despair, depression to anger, depression to anger, depression to anger, depression to anger, Phoenix to Yuma, Phoenix to Yuma, Phoenix to Yuma, Phoenix to Yuma. You're sort of lost in the desert. And what we want you to say instead is, I didn't get here to this angry, hateful place by accident. Some of you are having a little bit of difficulty with this dialogue because you have sat in seminars or listened to tapes where someone has sat in the hot seat and Abraham has refused to let them carry on about something that was bothering them. In other words, we were encouraging them to give us better sounding words, to try to make the best of it, to pivot, to let's do a book of positive aspects. And so this sounds very odd for us to be really rooting for you to move into rage and anger. But we want you to understand it depends upon where you are when we begin on the emotional scale. In other words, if you're frustrated over something, we're certainly not going to coach you back into the vibration of anger. That's going in the wrong direction. But if you are in depression, then anger is going in the right direction. And that's something that most people have not known. Now, the relief factor is the key to your guidance system. Do you know that there are feelings of relief in every emotion? You can even find relief in what you would call ecstasy. In your physical body, it's hard to feel those incremental vibrational differences, but even from your non-physical perspective, there are degrees of ecstasy. In other words, you can find relief in every single emotional stance or everywhere along the emotional spectrum, because we are evolving beings. It is getting bigger and better. The universe is expanding, and our capacity to feel joy is expanding also. We want you to stop beating up on yourself about wherever you are and about however you've been feeling. And we want you to make a decision to factor out anything that's outside of you because they don't know. They don't know. Your emotions are giving you the information about who you really are and where you are right now. Your emotions are giving you information about the vibrational variation between your habit of thought and the vibration of the desire that you've launched. Your new mantra is, I'm going to make the best of this. Whatever it is, I'm going to make the best of this. I'm going to make the best of this. Sometimes we see you're not making the best of it. Esther catches herself and laughs. She will find herself in a place she does not want to be, and instead of making the best of it, she will deliberately make the worst of it. Because she has a point to make. When you are in a place different from where you want to be, and you're making the worst of it, the reason that you do it is because every fiber of your being knows that you are loved and knows that you are blessed and knows that it is supposed to be good for you. And when in some moment it is not being good for you, you sort of go berserk on some level. And then you want to sort of explain why you're not where at many levels you know you should be. And what we want to say to you is give that up. You don't have to explain anything to anyone. The only thing that is important is your awareness that this thought does give you incremental relief from the thoughts that you were thinking earlier. And when you notice the relief, no matter how great or small it is, take it and pat yourself on the back. And in the same moment, you will regain your feeling of empowerment. And remember, this emotional scale is all about the feeling of connection to who you are and empowerment, all the way down to that feeling of disempowerment. So then when you think about those emotions that are down here at these lower registers, and you think about despair, you think about grief, you think about fear, aren't they all about disempowerment? In other words, whenever you say, I'm afraid of something, isn't it the feeling of being out of control? Isn't it the feeling of something that you definitely don't want to happen, but there's something that's out of your ability to do anything about it? Isn't that what that feeling is? And don't all of those emotions that are on that negative end of the scale, and that's a tricky thing to say because the graduations are so steady, but you get the sense of what we are talking about. Don't they feel empty? Doesn't fear feel empty? Anger, doesn't it feel empty? And it is, because it is you disallowing who you really are to flow. Now you know everything we know. We are eager to talk with you about anything that is important to you. You will discover a delicious unfolding. Sometimes we will not call you to the chair, but we will answer your question just the same. For everything that you are wanting to know, we are fully aware of. Sometimes we will ask a representative on your behalf to come and ask your question. And when that happens, it is really of benefit to you because you are actually more likely to allow the receiving of the answer if you are not in the mode of beating the drum of the question quite so much. This is really co-creating at its best. It is our anticipation that we will together literally take thought beyond that which it has been before. We have enjoyed this interaction immensely. It is wonderful to come together with those like you who are coming more and more in every day to understand the perfection that is you. You will never get it done, and you cannot get it wrong, but it is supposed to be fun. It is supposed to feel good. You are supposed to feel good. You are blessed, loved beings, and you are supposed to thrive. So get on with it. There is great love here for you. We are.